Welcome back to Echoes Across Time. I'm trying to unpack the lives of fascinating people from all walks. The stories here are not about material success, but about how my guests became who they are and what they want to leave behind, emotionally, spiritually, and as core life experiences. Born and raised in Jamaica, Wayne Native Jobson is a Grammy-winning producer, artist, filmmaker, and radio pioneer whose career spans the very heart of global music culture. Spotted early by Clive Davis, Wayne's band Native recorded for RCA, A&M, and MCA, opening for legends like Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and David Bowie in front of 150,000 people at California's US Festival. As a producer and writer, he's worked with icons ranging from Keith Richards, Maroon 5, and Willie Nelson, to Jimmy Cliff, Ziggy Marley, and Gwen Stefani, earning 2 Grammy Awards for No Doubt's Rock Steady with the #1 hit Hey Baby and Underneath It All. Wayne helped shape the soundtrack to Disney's Cool Runnings, contributed to Adam Sandler's gold-certified 50 First Dates soundtrack, produced acclaimed documentaries on Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, and is now producing Cool Runnings 2. From the world's biggest stages to the #1 reggae show in America on K-Rock, Wayne Jobson has spent a lifetime connecting Jamaica's cultural heartbeat to the global mainstream. Wayne!
Maximum respect,
my
man.
God. So happy to have you here.
Same here, man. From one yard man to another yard man, Jamaican.
I can't believe it at all. I've never done this accent on the podcast before, and everyone who see this is going to be absolutely amazed.
I'm going to say, wow, we never know you were a yard man. That's so cool, man.
I'm so excited to have you on
Thanks
the show.
for inviting me, man.
You just come back from Jamaica.
Yeah, man. It's just unusual. Anything with Jamaica is always going to be a little bit late. So, like,
Yes.
I just came in last night. My flight was cancelled. So I had to get a 6 a.m. flight this morning, get up at 4. So I slept 2 hours last night. So I'm usually much sharper than this, but hopefully I'll be okay.
We're going to have to keep you naturally caffeinated.
Naturally,
Yeah.
definitely.
So tell me, on this podcast, I like to explore people's lives, their stories, their histories, what makes them who they really are.
Definitely.
But let's start off with telling me, the stage of life you're in at the moment. What would you describe as Wayne's life at the current time?
Well, I'd say most of my life, when people ask me what do, I say I'm a storyteller. So when I'm going to write songs, and I've been lucky enough to write songs that other people have recorded, and people like Willie Nelson and Jimmy Buffett and and all of the reggae guys. And so, but I've also been on the radio. So whether I'm telling the story on a radio or I'm putting together a film or I'm writing a song, at the whole time I'm just trying to come up with a great story. And for me, the story is the most important thing. The song is the most important thing. Because in music, everybody can sing, but how many people have a great song? And the song is really what makes you. The song is what made Bob Marley into the greatest star in the world and my favorite musician in history because the songs are just so brilliant.
So I like to dig into what makes us who we are, and you're a storyteller, like you say. So let's talk a little bit about your story and your roots. You're Jamaican born, right? Both parents are Jamaican.
Both.
Tell me a little bit about your early life in Jamaica. Tell me about your parents.
Yeah, man. So my family Jobson's originally from England, so they came about 200 years ago. We've been in Jamaica for a long time now. My dad is a British heritage, but mixed up with Spanish and black and a little bit of everything. And my mom, same thing, Spanish and all that. But up to my great-grandfather, all were born in Jamaica. And so, it's just one of those magic places where everything is just like very spiritual place, That's how we created the greatest black leader of all time, Marcus Garvey, the greatest musician of all time, Bob Marley, the greatest athlete of all time, Usain Bolt. So we've just been so blessed because it's a spiritual place. So to grow up there, you grow up in a spiritual place and grow up around greatness. And that's what I always say, is that you don't want to hang out with famous people. Do not hang out with famous people. You want to hang out with great minds. And I aspire to hang out with great minds. And I've been so lucky in my life to hang out with great minds like Bob Marley, like Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, like Paul Allen from Microsoft, who was one of my friends. And he wrote the code that all of our computers and cell phones work on. So just to be around those great minds. Hopefully it rubs off on you. And maybe I got 1% of inspiration from them. You know?
I think a lot more than that.
So I always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, get out. But that doesn't apply if you're teaching people, because the whole idea is our idea is to pass it on.
Yeah.
Like Bob Marley has an amazing song called Pass It On, him and Bunny Wailer. And it says, live for yourself, you will live in vain. Live for others, you will live again. So it's like a matter of passing it on. And that's why, Bob was so generous and all that. But if you want to be around brilliant minds, and even the other day I was hanging out with Shaggy, Shaggy, the Jamaican singer, and Sting. He was doing a record with Sting, so I was in the studio with him, and I was standing up beside Sting. So I said, you know why I'm standing up beside you? And he goes, no. And I said, because if God sends a song down for you, it might miss you and hit me. And he said, I hope I'm beside you when God sends one for you so I can get your own. So the whole idea is that there's ideas just flowing around the world, and if there's like 4 great minds in the room, millions of ideas are just flowing, you know what I mean? And then you can pick up one of the other person's own, I think. But if you're in a room with people who have no sense and are nothing and are just famous or something like that, then you're not going to get any ideas, So to make the ideas flow, you have to be around great.
Where did this sort of thing in you come from? I mean, were one of your parents very creative? Were they storytellers? Do you remember that?
Well, growing up around my dad was very successful. He ran the leading business in Jamaica was bauxite, which is what they used to make aluminum. Sure. So Jamaica was the world's leading supplier of it. And he was the first person to set up Reynolds bauxite, which became Reynolds Wrap,
Right.
And Jamaica was the world's leading supplier of bauxite. So he's basically the pioneer of the Jamaican business. And just to watch him, be so successful and run a whole company which was the biggest industry in Jamaica. And at the same time being just such a humble, amazing guy that everybody loved, and he helped everybody. And it was just an inspiration to be humble and kind. And I never ever saw him mean to anybody or anything like that. So it just kind of inspires you to be around. And then also growing up around greatness was that my cousin, Dickie Jobson, started Island Records with Chris Blackwell.
Amazing.
So as a kid growing up around Chris, was kind of like my mentor in the business. And he's the greatest record man of all time.
Yeah.
So being with him and Dickie was a movie director as well. So he wrote and directed the movie Countryman.
Right.
So to be around, and then because I was around, then I got to meet Bob Marley and go to the studio with Jimmy Cliff and Cat Stevens and people like that, And so the whole Island Records family. So I was blessed enough to grow up in the Island Records family and just see this level of greatness.
So that's so interesting. Your dad was a corporate man.
Yeah.
What was your mum like?
Yeah, my mom was a housewife, but she was on every kind of panel, all the kind of charities for girls, kids that need help and all that. So she was really a kind of a charity woman. She helped so many people and all that. So to see the great work she was doing with the charity and the great work my dad was doing in the industry and kind of helping to build Jamaica through the bauxite thing, it was just an inspiration to be around people who are that hardworking,
And they stayed together?
Yeah, stayed forever. The 60 years they were together.
That's amazing.
Yeah, man, before they passed.
Yeah.
But to see that kind of, also say it's not only a matter of you have to be, hard work is the most important thing. And in life, if you just remember, we're here on a mission and you have a limited time, so you just have to work every day. I mean, you can have a day off once in a while, but if you're on a mission, just work and work. And for the work part, I was inspired not only by my father, but by Bob Marley.
Yeah. Because
he's the hardest working Jamaican anybody ever knew. And that's why he was the most successful Jamaican, because he was the first on the bus, first on stage, everything. He was just so focused and dedicated, And Michael Manley, who was the Prime Minister of Jamaica, said that the most hard work in Jamaica he ever met in his life was Bob Marley, because he was just so focused, and so to be like that. So, a lot of people think of Jamaicans as laid back people. They're only laid back when they're in Jamaica.
Yeah.
When Jamaicans go to America, they're the hardest working people. Any Jamaican you meet in America, they have 5 jobs, they're a milk route and a paper route, all this. They make fun of Jamaicans in America because they work so hard,
So it's interesting because you and I share in common that we both have families that came originally from the UK. Mm-hmm. Both came a long time ago. I think you said 200 years.
Yeah.
Mine came in 1810.
Wow.
So probably not that far.
Around the same time.
Yeah, around the same time,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And, our families have lots of mixed blood in them, like you said about yours, same about mine. Mm-hmm. I think you probably met my uncle before, Robert Levy, who was at Jamaica Broilers. And if you meet him, he's darker skinned than you are.
Right.
I mean, you don't look at me and think I look Jamaican,
Exactly,
but, that is the beauty of Jamaica, that out of many, one people, right?
And, Jamaica, like Martin Luther King used to come to Jamaica and stay with a friend of mine, Ernie Smatt, and who was a legendary kind of figure. And And he wrote a lot of his speeches down there, and he wrote his book and everything down there. And Martin Luther King said it's a place that inspires him most on earth, because nobody in Jamaica says I'm African American, or or I'm white or whatever. Everybody just in Jamaica says they're a Jamaican.
Yeah.
He had never seen people live like that together in America, so that's why he would come there so often, and why he wrote his speeches and his books there.
You grew up in Kingston?
Ocho Rios.
In Ochi?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, nice.
Yeah, man.
And what do you remember of your childhood? I mean, obviously you remember your dad working hard. You told me that already. What else do you remember about your childhood?
Well, where we grew up was so lucky, because Reynolds had like this huge place up in the hills above Ocho Rios where the mines were. And it was like a 10,000 acre game preserve with horses and kind of ponds with fishes and all that. And we just got to roam wild. And in those days, Jamaica was very dangerous. Jamaica was very safe.
Yeah.
Now people say Jamaica is dangerous, but it's not. It's a few little bad things happen with the gangs in Kingston in the ghetto. But overall, for Jamaica, anybody listening to this, in Jamaica, we get 4 million tourists a year, and there's only 3 million Jamaicans. So there's more tourists than Jamaicans.
Yeah.
Nothing happened to any of the tourists. When you see a tourist and you said, have you been to Jamaica before? They go 5 times, They just keep coming back and coming back because they just love it so much. It's that spiritual magic, plus the physical beauty of the waterfalls and mountains and all that. But Jamaica is a very safe place.
I share the same story with people. I've certainly never had an issue in all my time in Jamaica, and I love the place, and it's gorgeous, just like you say. But to appreciate it, you've got to go into the interior, right?
Exactly.
You've got to explore. And if you go with an open heart and an open mind, it's an amazing place.
Magical place. And the thing is that some of the people might come and be in the tourist resorts and the all-inclusives, where there's just like, you go in any tourist place in the world, there's a lot of hustlers. So they go and they meet the hustlers and they think that's Jamaica, but that's not Jamaica.
Yeah.
When you go up into the country, you see a woman and she comes and goes, good morning, God bless you, my son. That kind of love in the heart. And they just give you everything they have, whatever. They don't believe in no kind of selfishness or anything. It's just pure love.
And school, were you good in school?
Yeah, I was really lucky. The school I went to was up in the hills, up in Brownstown, close to 9 Mile, where Bob Marley is from. And I graduated top of my class when I was like 14 years old, graduated from school. So I was very bright in the beginning. And who knows what happened later on. But I was bright. And then I went to law school and started in Barbados and then ended up in England.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, I got honors at law school and all. So did quite well. But at the same time, I was doing music.
Yeah.
So I was really lucky. I just happened to go to England to law school at the same time when reggae was really breaking big with Bob Marley and with punk.
Yeah.
And I managed to meet, a friend introduced me to Johnny Rotten from Sex Pistols, and he was the biggest star at the time in England, and he loved my music. And so he said, let me help you. And so he started spreading the word and said the next big thing is going to be Wayne Jobson Native. And then all the record companies called me up and said, Rotten says you're great too. Would you like a record deal?
Right.
But this time I'm a law student.
This is so funny.
I'm a law student. It's so crazy because now, what am I going to say to them? Yeah, I'm just a law student in England. And then they're going to go, get out, So I'm going to meet with these big guys and they said, what you doing here? And I said, well, they always say you have to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Right? So I said, I'm just in England, trying to get a record deal. I'd cut a demo in Jamaica with Lee Scratch Perry, who was a great producer, who did but all the Bob Marley's good stuff, and Robert Palmer, Paul McCartney. And I said, I just did this record with Lee Perry, and he's, and he really likes me a lot, and Johnny Rotten likes me a lot. And they were like, how much money do you want? And they just gave me all this money. Meanwhile, I was a law student. And I said, I have the biggest band in Jamaica. If it had ever been now, they would have just Googled it and said, get the hell out.
Oh my God.
But because it was, because there was nowhere to check in. So they just said, okay, if you said you have the biggest band in Jamaica, and Lee Scratch Perry said you're good, and Johnny Rotten said good, let's go, So they gave me a bunch of money, finished my law, got honors and stuff, came back to Jamaica and set up the band, and that's what started Native, which was my...
That's amazing. Do you remember when you first got into music? Did you love it as a child?
Oh yeah, growing up, I remember my parents always had music in the house, so we were listening to South Pacific and Hatari, the Henry Mancini album and stuff like that. Oklahoma, that was kind of what really influenced us. And then, of course, the world changed from black and white to Technicolor when you heard, the Beatles, saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and that just changed everything. And now we knew that, what music really was. Changed to Technicolor, and then when it went from another version from Technicolor to the greatest thing ever was when my cousin, who was managing Bob Marley, who started Island with Chris Blackwell, Dickie, and he said, I have something to play for you, and he played me. Long before it came out, he played me Concrete Jungle from Catch a Fire, and then my whole world changed, because I said, I never knew reggae could sound like that. And I had been a huge fan of Bob Marley in the early days, but it was more kind of straight reggae.
Yeah.
But Chris Blackwell put the rock on top of it,
Yeah.
with that opening guitar
Yeah.
in Wayne Perkins, the beginning of Concrete Jungle and that whole album. And then Rabbit, the keyboard player from The Who, played that thing. So,
Yeah.
because I told Chris Blackwell the other day, people say, oh, you're the greatest record man of all time. And people say you're great because of Cat Stevens and U2 and all that. And I said, no, the greatest thing you ever did, Chris, was put the rock on Bob Marley on that album, Catch a Fire album. And it lifted reggae from just being a small music like soca or something to worldwide power.
Yeah.
And it was Chris who did that.
When you signed your deal, which record company?
Arista, Clive Davis.
Arista, okay. So you signed your deal, you're a law student, get your record deal, go back to Jamaica. So what happened then?
So
what were you thinking?
So no, luckily the guys were just some friends who I had cut the demos with Lee Scratch Perry.
Yeah.
And the day when we recorded, it was just one day Lee Scratch Perry just said, I'd been down to see him, and somebody introduced me to him, and I said, hey, I have some songs I want you to hear. I'm just a little teenage kid with a guitar. And he was like, you have some songs to play for me. So does everybody else in the world. Now get the hell out. I thought that's what he would say, right? But he said, I want to work with you. You're original Jamaican Indian. He thought I was an Indian. It's called the Taino, the Arawak Indian.
Yeah.
So he said, you're an Arawak Indian. I go, yes, I'm an Arawak Indian. My whole family is a long line of Arawak. Whatever he said, I just said yes.
Yes.
So he said, okay, come tomorrow. So we went in the next day, brought my friends. We just laid down the stuff. Luckily, we had a genius called Joe Higgs, who was one of the godfathers of Jamaican music, who taught Bob Marley and the Wailers to sing. And he came in with me, and he was a band leader. So I had him as a band leader because we weren't very good.
Yeah.
And then I had Lee Scratch Perry as a producer. So the two greats of reggae music were on my first session. How blessed was I?
I mean,
as a little teenager with a little talent, but not that level, you know what I mean? And so the record came out great, and that's why Clive Davis, we were the first reggae band ever signed Clive Davis at Arista Records.
I mean, what a story. And you make it sound so easy. And kind of like, I grew up in a blessed world, and I had this amazing mom and dad, and I grew up in this idyllic environment where I was kind of outside playing, and I happened to be good at school, and I went and did a law degree in London, and I ended up with a record deal. Just like you do, right? But there must have been moments in all of this where you kind of thought, is this real? Do I pinch myself? Or you had doubts, or you had worries?
Luckily, I was always kind of very confident. I thought, because I knew we were writing great songs at the time, and the songs were good compared to the other songs that were out there. Of course, nowhere near on the level of Bob Marley, but at least after Bob, we were a few rungs down from him, but we had good songs, and the rest of reggae was really good. But I figured we could match it, so I was more confident, and I figured we could really do it. And when you're young at that age, you're just kind of more cocky, and you don't really think everything over. You just go, I'm just going to go for it, and hopefully it works.
I mean, you had friends in Jamaica, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were living normal lives.
No, right, yeah.
And they were not getting record deals age 21 or whatever it was.
And when I got the deal, everybody was, how the hell did you get a deal? You don't even have a band. What's going on? I was so lucky. The other thing was all the guys who went to law school with me, right?
Yeah.
Now they're like in jacket and tie going to court, and it's 200 degrees, and they're like, oh my God, how are you so lucky to be traveling around the world and all? They think I'm Paul McCartney, and I'm saying, no, I'm not, right? Because I'm living this life and traveling around. It's like, but it's all relative. Like I was telling you, I mean, one of my favorite stories that I tell people is that, so we were blessed enough. We have a friend called Dave Stewart, who's a great musician.
Yeah, sure. Eurythmics,
Eurythmics,
right?
yeah. And so we've done a lot of stuff with Dave through the year. Me and my brother Brian, who is my partner in crime.
Yeah.
And through Dave, we met Paul Allen. I was telling you about the guy from Microsoft, who is this absolute genius. You know? So after this guy conquers the world, writes the code, does all that kind of thing. We were sitting down on the balcony up at my house, and Paul is there. And Paul turns to me and my brother, and he goes, man, you guys have the life, eh? I go, I have the life. Okay, you have $30 billion, 5 boats, three boats, 5 planes. Everybody thinks you're James Bond, and you think I'm James Bond. Okay, you know what I mean? So it's all relative. You know what I mean? So when you look, you have to say, like, these people who you think like that, and you think that they're just having the most glamorous life. No, they have so much pressure and craziness that Paul saw me and my brother living a great life, traveling around the world, making great music and all that, and not having any stress.
Yes.
Because the more time stuff comes like that, the stress that comes with all that money, it's just like it. And so many people hustling you and all that we were lucky to get away with just to live good and travel and all that, but not have the incredible stress.
And that's interesting, because the word that comes to my mind is freedom, right? You felt that you had freedom. And from your story, you felt that you had freedom from an early age, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know much about your ancestors? Do you know much about the people who came to Jamaica and why they came?
No, but I know it was back from slavery days, and the jobs are really, because we still go to the properties that they had,
Right.
and up there and up in the hills, and you can see all of the quarters and stuff like that. So it was yeah. But I think they did really well,
Yeah.
And even from slavery days, they're coming up, and just so many. You see, the mixtures. The good thing about Jamaica is, out of many one people, you have a million different things. You're not just from this one place. You're not just white. You're not just black. You're all the different shades and all of the Spanish stuff and the original Arawak Indians, the Tainos. When you have all that blood in you, it just makes you more versatile and able to accept everybody from around the world. And so there's no kind of, one thing in Jamaica, there's no racism at all.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because people often meet me and I say, yeah, I'm from Jamaica and I'm 8th generation Jamaican on my dad's side. And they go, how can you be from Jamaica? And I go, well, Jamaica's like that. It's full of different people of all colors, and it's very, very mixed, right? And you see every single shade that there is, but all of them are united, as you say, in being Jamaican. Jamaican is almost a state of mind, right?
And they're the most proud people in the world. That's the thing. No matter how poor they are or whatever, they're like kings. They're confident, and that's one thing I love, is that they're just so confident and have no kind of. I always tell people the story where I went to what is big, like a black conference, music.
Yeah.
And the person who was kind of holding it was Jesse Jackson, who unfortunately passed the other day. And he was one of the greats. But that conference was Michael Jackson and all the heads of the record companies and all of these guys. And all of these guys are like the biggest music executives in the world. All of them are making $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Well, Michael Jackson is making $50 million a year.
Yeah.
And all of them stood up, and Jesse Jackson chanted, and all of them go, I am somebody. I'm going to say, if Jesse Jackson ever came to Jamaica and chanted, I am somebody, they would throw a Red Stripe bottle after him. They would go, we know we're somebody from the day we're born. We don't have to chant anything. We're so confident and cocky, and we're Jamaican, and we're the proudest people in the world.
Yeah.
So they have no kind of, they don't have to be humble.
You remember being a student in London and feeling confident?
Yes, at the time, there was a lot of racism. I watched a lot of racism around, and I used to go to all of the concerts, Rock Against Racism concerts.
What period of time we're talking about?
That was 78, 79.
Okay, right.
And that was like going to the concerts, and headlining was Elvis Costello,
right,
and the Clash,
yeah,
and the Steel Pulse.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough because at the time I met not only Johnny Rotten, but the Clash and Joe Strummer, Mick Jones, and it's kind of stayed in touch with them through the years. And just to see how they really helped reggae around the world, because the Clash is a band that really brought reggae to the world, and of course the Police too.
Yeah.
And then I was lucky enough to know Stuart Copeland and Sting from the Police and Andy, and go to the shows and hang out with them and all that. So just to be around that kind of greatness, it can hope it rubs off. Yeah.
Were you around them when you were still a law student, or was
yeah, because I met Rotten, and he used to take me to all of the shows and everything.
Right.
I got to meet them with all the Steel Pulse and everything, and I just got my record deal, and my I had done this kind of demo, was kind of being shared around London, and people realized that there was something here because Lee Scratch Perry said it was good.
Yeah.
So then it started to get a little buzz.
So you felt accepted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, which is great. Was there ever a time that you didn't feel accepted? Was there ever a time that you thought that you didn't fit in anywhere?
No, because even in Jamaica, you would think that they would say, well, here's this, kid, this teenager, and he's like more fair than the other people, and how did he get a record deal? Because people even say that Bob Marley got the record deal because he was half white, which is all ridiculous, and it's just it's pure talent. But I was never rejected by anybody in Jamaica, or none of the musicians in Jamaica would say you're not, worthy to be with us or anything. Everybody just accepted us. And
you wrote, you sung, you played guitar.
Yeah.
All of those things.
All of them, yeah.
Anything else?
I know a little bit of keyboards, but not too great. But we we used to do shows with Steel Pulse and all those kind of musicians and everything. And through the years, we just stayed in touch with everybody. And we're just, just blessed to be around greats and have a little bit of talent, I guess, ourselves, and so able to kind of break it.
When you wrote, did you like writing on your own or writing with others?
No, me and my brother always write the songs.
Okay.
It's always easier for you when you can co-write, and that's the thing with Lennon and McCartney. When you have somebody else to feed it off, then you don't have to do all the work yourself. It's like, when you have to do it on your own, it's really, really tough.
So it was you and your brother?
Yeah.
Growing. And did you have any other siblings, or just the two of you?
Well, we had a sister, but she wasn't in the business at all. She was like a kind of health person. And so just me and my brother, I was lucky to have him to feed the songs off. Because the thing is, when you write a song, you don't know whether it's great or not.
Right.
You know, so you need somebody to tell you, no, that's terrible, throw it away. Or we can take that bridge and change it a little bit and make it good. And so my brother is kind of like this brilliant writer who knows how to change things and make them, structure them around.
So if you had to describe your two characters, how would you describe him first?
He's like a total music buff who just sits down all day writing, playing, you know, studying and listening. He listens to every single record that comes out. So he knows what's going on. He's really, really sharp with that. I'm doing the music, but I'm also doing business. I'm putting together films and radio and podcasts and all that. So I'm kind of the more business side, and he's just a strictly music side. He's what you call a train spotter.
Right.
You know, who is just focused on anything and nothing else. And I mean, the inspiration for that also is like, you know, our neighbor in Ocho Rios is Keith Richards. So we did his Wingless Angels album, you know.
How old were you when you met Keith?
About 21.
So shortly after you got your record
Shortly
deal.
after record,
Yeah. Amazing.
And he was just, you know, the greatest guy in the world. I knew he wasn't living in town, but I didn't want to meet him because I was so, you know, I've always been very, very anti-drugs. Right. And anybody who's into drugs and all that, no, marijuana is not a drug, right? That's Bob Marley's thing. So I was hanging out a lot with Bob Marley and Peter Church, but weed is not a drug. I mean, ganja is not a drug, but anybody who was into all those other drugs, I wasn't into it. And then my friend said, no, he's the greatest guy. Come and meet him. A guy called Freddie Sessler was like Keith's adopted father. So he introduced me to Keith, and he was the greatest guy in the world. And he was so humble and nice, and we used to jam. And then eventually there's, in our town, there's a group of Rastas called the Wingless Angels, and their lead singer was Justin Hines, one of Jamaica's greatest singers ever.
Right.
And so it was basically Justin Hines and the Wingless Angels and Keith. So we did the album, and it's basically the Rasta doing the chanting with the drums, and then Keith plays rock guitar over it. So we got nominated for a Grammy, and it was really good stuff. But Keith is just this. Reason why Keith is so great is because that's all he wants to do. Yeah. Like I said, kind of my brother is like him. Yeah. That's all he wants to do is play music. Yeah. If you say, Keith, let's go to a movie, he goes, no. Yeah. He sits down all day and just plays and plays and plays. And then when he's not playing, he records it and then he listens back to it. So he's either playing it or listening back to it. Yeah. And he might just jam for an hour, and then it's all nothing usable. And then all of a sudden he just hears ta 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 na na, and you go, okay, guys, and he pulls that out. So he's either, and you have to jam for an hour to find one good riff. You know? Yeah, amazing. And then he does it. And so,
and your brother's the same.
Yeah. So if you're that focused and that's when you become one of the all-time greats. Yeah. I'm trying to do too many different projects to just focus like that. Yeah. But I mean, another person I got who is my friend, and she's absolutely brilliant, is Diane Warren. Yeah. You know? Because all she does is write all day. She doesn't have any life. She just writes all day. And that is how you come up with great songs. Because she's a train spotter. Yeah. Like Keith Richards, like my brother, train spotters. Yeah. If I was ever that focused, I would be, who knows? But, you know, you want to try different things. And you want to do films. And you
got to be true to yourself, right?
Exactly.
And your brother is being true to himself, and you're being true to yourself. Yeah, man, I'm like you, you know. I have a mind that searches after all sorts of different things.
Exactly.
And we have to be true to that nature.
And being a storyteller, as soon as I hear a great story, I go, oh my gosh, has anybody done that in a film yet? Okay, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And anything, if it's a great story, I'll put it in the podcast. I'll write a song about it. I'll make a film about it. Because for me, stories are the most important thing.
Did you imagine when you were, you know, like a 13-year-old boy that you'd have a future in music or entertainment? Did you think that?
Not at all, because the only kind of little glimmer of hope that we had was because my cousin had started Island Records with Chris Blackwell. Yeah. So growing up, we watched Chris with you know, all of those early bands with Traffic and Steve Winwood and then of course Bob Marley, and so we knew that there was some kind of a chance, but we never thought that we would be stars. We thought we were just going to be songwriters. Yeah. So we were just writing the songs and doing it, and then we were lucky enough that Lee Scratch Perry saw something in us and said, okay, let's do the demo, and then we got the deal with Arista. So he said, well, let's just do the songs ourselves. We don't have to give them to anybody else.
So in an alternative universe, you would have just gone on and been a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
That could have been a very different life.
Different life, man. But I didn't really enjoy the law that much. It's just my parents said you have to have something, you know, else to do. So they kind of forced me to do the law. And I'm glad they did, because I learned to do all my own, you know, I could do my own contracts. Because through the years, we've done records with Universal and A&M with Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss. And the record company we didn't really sign with was Island, because it was family. It was too close to home. We wanted to be with other MCA. We did an album with. And so, you know, it was just kind of, you know, experimenting, trying different things. And
Was your life like a sliding doors moment? You could have kind of missed out on being in music? Or do you think you just had so much influence around you that you would have ended up there whatever way it had gone?
Yeah, I think because we love music so much, and we were writing reasonable songs. So we said, well, let's just go for it, you know. And then And then the thing is, if you never actually see it happen, then you can kind of go, well, there's no chance. But because we watched Bob Marley go from just a small little Jamaican guy to, you know, going, I remember when the first review that they ever had of Bob Marley in the newspaper, I cut out the little clipping and put it on my wall. It was like, at that time, absolutely nobody knew who he was, you know, because I was that much. And then when you see like your friend go from, you know, zero to hero, you just go, oh my gosh, well, maybe I can do it too. It gives you some glimmer of hope.
Did you know Bob before he'd recorded anything?
I met him in the early days with Blackwell and with Dickie, and he was just copying up. They had just done Catch a Fire. And so in Jamaica, he was, I mean, I liked it because he had lots of number ones in Jamaica, but nobody abroad knew who he was. You know? And he was a big inspiration for me with how hard he worked. And I remember he said to me, don't live in America. He said, go to America and work and take your money and bring it back to Jamaica, but don't live over there full time. So that's what I'm doing up to now. You know, I just work in America and go back to Jamaica.
So you're still following Bob's advice.
Still following Bob's advice. And hopefully trying to be as hardworking as him, who is always on time and, you know, fight to be anywhere near as hardworking, or as, you know, it's hard to, nobody can be as brilliant as him, but maybe you can be as hardworking as.
Did faith play any part in your life at any point?
Yeah, I grew up, you know, Catholic. So with my parents, I went to Catholic school and all that. And I actually, I have a good song which you can check out. It's I wrote a song with, actually, so Jimmy Buffett. So Buffett was my friend, and I toured with him for a year, helping him to launch his radio station. Yeah. And going to all of his shows and broadcasting live from his thing. Because he used to listen to me on the radio, and he was a fan of mine on the radio. So he said, well, come, let's tour with me and we can broadcast live and all that. So then when I started hanging with him, he told me that he used to be a altar boy. Right. So I imagine the most decadent guy in the world, but the greatest guy in the world, Jimmy Buffett, was an altar boy. So I said to him, Jimmy, you used to be an altar boy, but now you're an altered boy. So we wrote a song called Altered Boy and saying, no, you're a lapsed Catholic and all that. So it was, so he was the same kind of thing. Buffett went from being an altar boy to being a little bit altered. So the same thing happened to me. But you know, you definitely you keep that faith, you know, the faith of whatever you believe in, as long as you have some kind of faith. And even people tell you that some of the religions are crazy. Some people even say that Rasta is strange. And I go, listen, any religion that's teaching you to live clean and live pure and be filled with love. Yeah. And when you meet the real Rastas up in the hills of Jamaica, it's just pure love. You know what I mean? They don't know anything else but that. It's like no anger, no nothing like that. And that's, if a religion can make you like that, then you need that religion.
So the principles of it have always been sat with you, basically. Yeah. But it's not been something that you, I mean, do you go to church?
Yeah. I go to church once or twice a month if I'm around. And in Jamaica, I go more than when I'm in America. But and even my brother, he plays bass in the church every Sunday. Right. In school there. So when I'm there, I go with him and all that. So, you know, we still definitely believe, and it's that kind of faith that keeps you grounded when things, because you just being in the entertainment business, you're around so many crazy people. Sure. You know? Yeah. And with people you grow up with and look up to, when you find out that they're really damaged goods and there's just so much craziness, you know, you have to kind of keep your faith to stay away from that. You know? And
you still live in Ocho Rios?
Yeah, Ocho Rios.
So you've lived all your life in Ocho Rios?
All my life in Ocho Rios, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Still my favorite place. You know? If anybody wants to go, I mean, that's the place to visit. You know, Ocho Rios means 8 rivers in Spanish, and this has the most incredible waterfalls. And then the waterfall that we have at our house is the best one in the world. You know?
Which is?
It's up in the hills. It doesn't really have a name. I mean, it's like a private waterfall. Right. But if you want to see it, you can go to a video that a girl called Lord from New Zealand, she shot her video up there. And the song is called Perfect Places. So if you go to YouTube and you put in Perfect Places with Lord, you'll see this amazing waterfall. And that's where we are.
That's on your property.
Yeah.
So you're up in the hills a little bit.
Yeah.
How far up?
Only about 10 minutes drive from the coast. Okay. It's kind of on the way from the coast up to Bob Marley's 9 Mile place. And just 10 minutes up there and you come up on this incredible waterfall. But nobody can find it. Yeah. So people who come to visit us can never find us because it's just completely deserted, you know, in the middle of the jungle. I
mean, for anyone who doesn't know, that coastline of Jamaica is just spectacularly beautiful, right? With all these hidden waterfalls, beautiful rivers, incredible tropical rainforests. Right. I mean, it's amazing, right?
You know, people say, well, Christopher Columbus discovered the New World or discovered, you know, when Christopher Columbus ran into Jamaica, he said the fairest isle that eyes have ever seen. Yeah. He had never seen anything like that. And all the other islands and all the parts of America that he went to and all that, Jamaica was the special place.
Yeah. Do you feel you've ever made a mistake with anything that you've done? Have you ever regretted anything later?
Not really. I think I've been in music and all that. I've been lucky that everything worked out. In law, I did finish. If I hadn't finished, I would be kind of regret it. So I finished that. Yeah. And you always think, you know, what if I had, when we first got our record deal, we moved to LA.
Yeah.
So after we got that record deal in England, we should have gone to England because England signed us. And instead, we came to America.
Right.
That was one big mistake because in America, Bob Marley couldn't get arrested.
Right.
But whereas Bob Marley was selling out 100,000 stadiums in Milan and all that, you know. And so if we had gone to England and rode on that wave of reggae that was happening over there, like the Police and the Clash and the Specials and the English Beat, we would have been much bigger. But because we came to LA and we just couldn't get arrested, you know, it was just like really, really rough. And I remember even like when we first, so we were with Arista, and Arista Publishing, the guy was the head of Arista Publishing, one of the most powerful publishers in the world, Billy Michel. And so I delivered the album to him and I said, what do you think, you know? And he goes, I just don't hear it. And I said, well, the reason why you don't hear it is because you don't know about reggae. So he said, don't tell me about reggae. I know John Marley personally. I know John Marley personally. So now we know exactly how much reggae he knew. Like, and just the stuff we've been through. And I mean, I can't call his name. I don't think he's with us anymore. But, and the other one was we were signed to a big record company in America. And I won't bother to say the name because the guy who was our friend and he played on our record and everything. So we signed a record deal and then a month passed. You know, you're supposed to get paid the next day. So a month has passed and we haven't got the money. Yeah. And every week we keep saying, tell them to send the goddamn money because we're in LA and we're living and we need expenses. And after about a month of not paying us the money, our guy who was kind of like our manager, producer, called up the record company and said, what the hell is going on? Native are waiting for the money. They signed up a month ago. And the guy said, listen, all they want is some reefer. Just give them some reefer and they'll shut up. Right? See, that's how the record companies are thinking. Once you give Jamaicans some ganja, they'll just get stoned and forget that you owe them money. So it was just like, so that's what we're up against with the kind of record companies in America. So the mistake was we should have gone to England and they would have been much bigger in it because we could have rode on the wave of the Police and the Clash and Specials. And
a fascinating story. Do you think that you've changed over time or do you think you've always been the same?
I've always tried to just stay humble and, you know, and people, some people, I don't think I've done anything great. People say maybe I've done some good stuff, but and people say, well, how do you stay humble? And I'm just lucky enough to grow up in Jamaica where I could just go up the road and there's Keith Richards, you know, go down to Montego Bay and go hang with Paul McCartney. Yeah. Also in Montego Bay was Johnny Cash. Yeah. So I got to go hang with Johnny Cash and then go to Kingston hang with Bob Marley. So there's so many greats around, you know, and then getting to hang with like Paul Allen and through him met Bill Gates, you know, and then we went to South Africa, met Nelson Mandela. That was another really big thing for me, one of my big influences. So we got to meet with Mandela in South Africa. We went for the big concert that we helped put together called 46664, which was his prison number. So it was Bono and U2 and Queen and Eurythmics and Cat Stevens, Peter Gabriel. Yeah. And we went down with Jimmy Cliff. We took Jimmy Cliff and a guy who we were producing called Abdul Wright. And so to meet a great like Mandela, who's, I don't know if you know, but Mandela was in jail for 27 years. And when he came out, if you put me in jail for 27 hours, when I come out, everybody will be gone, right? Yeah. I'm not going to hold back. After 27 years, Mandela came out and he said to his jailer who locked him in the cell every night, he said, I forgive you. I love you. You're now my bodyguard. Yeah. So he gave the guy a job. Instead of putting him in prison, which I would have done, he gave him a job. And when they took me in to meet Mandela and shake his hand, the guy was just there, this white guy is just sitting like, this is my boy. Do not try anything. You know what I mean? I'm guarding him with my life because he forgave me. And, you know, so that kind of love that Mandela had made him into a saint. You know, it's just like so genius. So to be around, that's another being around greatness. Yeah. Being around Mandela, you just kind of feel, you know, it makes you humble. Yeah. So me just being lucky enough to be around all these greats, I said, well, how could I have any kind of ego? Come on, these are the guys. Well, am I going to have an ego when I'm standing next to Bob Marley? I'm going to have an ego next to Keith Richards. No, you just better shut up and be very, very humble because you're not even in the same universe as them, you know. So when people say, oh, you really good, I said, no. If you want to hear great, go listen to Bob Marley, go listen to Keith Richards. You know, like.
So life has been inspirational at many levels, right?
Very, very lucky, you know, to be around all that greatness. And so, you know, we just keep on doing the music, put it together, films, you know. I had put together a song for Cool Runnings 1, the Jamaica bobsled movie, which was Disney. And now we're developing Cool Runnings 2, the female bobsled team. Instead of the men, it's going to be female this time. And a few different projects like that. And then there was a big festival in Jamaica in 1982, probably actually the best festival I've ever been to in my life. Better than all of the Coachellas, which I've been to, and better than Desert Trip, which was the one with McCartney and the Stones and Bob Dylan. And that festival I was just a kid at the time, but it was amazing. It had Peter Tosh, Jimmy Cliff, Yellow Man, Black Uhuru, Toots and the Maytals, and then also Aretha Franklin, the greatest voice on earth.
Yeah.
Gladys Knight.
Yeah.
And then also Squeeze and so many artists like that. But The Clash.
Yeah.
And then the Grateful Dead.
And who put that together?
It was the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Edward Seaga,
Right.
and his assistant, Babsy Grange, who is
Right.
now helping us with this. Luckily for us, she put that festival together 44 years ago when she was a young girl. And now she's almost Deputy Prime Minister in Jamaica. So she's so happy that the project is happening. And we've been shooting it properly. And so we're interviewing The Clash and everybody and putting it all together because The Clash is the only show in Jamaica.
Yeah.
And then the Grateful Dead, of course, it's so big because everybody wants to see the Grateful Dead in Jamaica because nobody has ever seen that footage and the whole magic of the Dead, you know, and the Beach Boy and all. So it was the most variety of any show that I've ever seen in my life. Plus, I was lucky enough to be there. So we're doing this whole documentary about it. It's called the Jamaica World Music Festival.
One of the things I want to explore with you is you kind of grew up at one level very simply, right? In Jamaica, country boy, a community that was close-knit, you know, kind of like a very ordinary life at one level. And then you're surrounded by all of these amazing people that you meet, incredible talent, big egos, some of them, right, as well. How do you deal with them? How do you relate to them?
The people who are the biggest of all don't have the egos. You know, they're so confident and sure of themselves that they don't need to. It's always the mid-range artists who are like the kind of B pluses, but the A people. Like I've been lucky enough I did the Willie Nelson album, which is called Countryman. You can check it out. And it's a reggae album. And actually we recorded one of my songs on it. In the end, it didn't make the album, but Willie loved it. And just to be around him, you know, he's like just. So I always say of the people that I have met, if all the rest of us, like you and I, are like 50% spirit and 50% dust, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Bob Marley, and Keith Richards are like 80% spirit and 20% dust. They're not like us. They're like ethereal figures, you know? So like they're just being around that kind of greatness is just very inspiring.
How interesting. Basically, you didn't really feel a sense of ego with them.
No, none of them had ego. Just humble, and And Keith, especially, I mean, when people look back 100 years from now, Keith kind of invented rock guitar. They're going to look at him as the man who invented rock music. Of course, you have Hendrix as a pure guitarist. You know, nobody can touch it. That's the greatest guitarist of all time. But as far as writing the songs and putting together Stones and keeping the Stones going for 60 years and all, it's all Keith, you know. And at no time would he have anything to say, oh, I'm great, or I've done this, or anything like that. He's just very humble.
And for you, growing up, would you say that you grew up with very strong values from your parents? Did they teach you, you know, the importance of right and wrong? And
definitely, I was so lucky to have. I said the luckiest thing I've had in my life is my two parents, Rudolph and Kathleen, who were just incredible people, just so pure and so honest, and you know, and just taught us all the right things of life and going to church every week. And if you grow up with that kind of a value system, because what really affects it is value system, and that's why I tell people who come to live in LA, and that's why I tell people I don't live in LA, I just visit LA. Bob Marley told me to go to LA and make some money, come back to Jamaica and spend the money, which is what I do, you know. But I tell people, if you grow up in LA and if you live in LA and you have kids, that's the worst thing. I mean, I love LA because it's physically beautiful and the beaches are great and all that, and there's so much opportunity here. That's why I live here. But I always tell people, if you have kids and you're going to bring them up in LA, and no disrespect, because I've known this guy for many years. One of his first films was with Chris Blackwell, my friend. It was called Basketball Diaries, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio. Right. So greatest guy. And I tell people, if you bring up your kids in LA, they think Leonardo DiCaprio is more important than Leonardo da Vinci. You know, that's the value system. And they end up with a whole kind of Kardashian thing and all that. So no disrespect to any of these people because they're great, but of course, no disrespect against Leo because he's a great actor, you know. But it's just a value system that people think that it's all celebrity. I'm talking about the celebrity culture. The celebrity culture is just really, really bad. And that's why we can be in LA and do it. But if a kid grows up here and they're 10 years old and then they're 13 and then they see that whole value system, then they end up like that. You know? It's like,
do you have your own family, Wayne?
No, just nieces and nephews, you know, so I can spoil them and give them back. You know?
And that's a choice that you made?
I've been traveling so much my whole life and doing so many projects. I haven't really had the time to do it. And then my sister had some kids and my brother had some kids. So let me just grab them. And then I think if you're going to do it, you have to just be in one place every day. You know, you can't travel all around the world and do that. Because,
you know, it's never too late to start.
Because I think if you leave a kid, and that's why so many celebrity kids are crazy, you know, even like the Rob Reiner thing the other day. So many
Yes.
kids are crazy. It's so sad because the parents are not around to give them all the love and guidance and stuff that they did. So they kind of just stray off, and then, they end up just, getting into drugs and all that. And then a lot of them just end up crazy and stuff like that. So I think if people are going to have kids, they really need to be together.
Yeah.
The family unit needs to be locked up, and for at least for the first 16 years of their
Yes.
life, you need to have them locked
So your brother and sister have kids.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
And they live in Jamaica still?
And my sister's kids live in America.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. But your brother...
Brother still lives in Jamaica. My sister still lives in Jamaica. It's just
Okay.
like the kids want, better schooling and all that. And even though Jamaica has really good schools, the kind of opportunities that, that are offered in New York and Florida and all that, they go there and get, get more opportunity.
And home will always be Jamaica as far as you're concerned?
Oh, yeah, Jamaica is a place. It's just a magical, spiritual place that, once you go there, and that's why everybody says they come back 5 times. Actually, Keith Richards from the Stones said that it's the only place in the world that his heart beats at the right pace. And that kind of sums up Jamaica, and that's why somebody like him would live there. That's why like Johnny Cash would live there, And it was like another great thing with Johnny Cash was every year he used to do a concert. He financed a children's for homeless kids in Montego Bay called SOS Children's Village.
Yeah.
And he financed it, and we just did a documentary about him, which I was just in Jamaica shooting, and it's coming out on A&E. And it was one Christmas morning, and gangsters came in and robbed them and tied them up and stole everything out of the house, and and ate off all the Christmas food, which is the worst part, and took away the Christmas presents.
Yeah.
And Johnny, when the cops came, they were all tied up. Johnny managed to pull the ropes.
Yeah.
And then Johnny came, and he and they called the police. And when the police came, the first thing he said was, "Don't hurt them." That's the first thing he thought of. Anybody else would go, "Get those mother," He was like, "Don't hurt them." And the cops went off. Gangsters in Jamaica, there's a shootout, so the cops killed them. And when they came back, Johnny got really mad. "How dare you shoot the guys? I told you not to hurt them." So he had that kind of a love, real love for him.
Yeah.
And he supported this children's home.
Yeah.
Called SOS Children's Village. And I remember once he did a concert, and at the end of the concert, he said, "Listen, I didn't make enough money today. I have to support these kids for the whole day. Anybody want to buy my guitar?" So he auctions off his guitar. "Anybody want to buy my hat?" He auctions off his hat. "Anybody want to buy my shirt? Anybody want to buy my shoes, my socks?" Until he's standing up in his pants, and the people go, "Pants, pants." And he goes, "Okay." So he takes off his pants and auctions off the pants for a lot of money, to support the kids in the children's home. So I said, Johnny gave the shirt off his back to help these children. So
literally, yeah.
Really, really spiritual guy,
is,
spiritual, full of love and all that. And because he was kind of considered an outlaw, people don't realize the kind of love that he has,
Yeah.
And with Keith Richards, he kind of has this bad boy thing because of the reputation with the drugs and all that. But it's just pure love. It's just like, there's, I say they're higher beings.
Yeah. What story in your life explains you better than any, resume could? Tell me something that tells us about who you really are.
Hard to say. I would just, the fact that I've, come out of Jamaica and managed to have a little bit of success around the world.
Yeah.
And still, just be normal, like there's no kind of attitude, nothing, and just trying to help people as much as I can. So that's the other thing is wherever you go, any chance I get young musicians, I try and help them and boost them up and all the time. Because I did radio all of these years, I try to help new musicians coming up, play them on the radio, get them to produce them, get record deals for them and all that. So I think just that kind of trying to be benevolent, trying to be love, trying to pass it on. So my one mission is like Bob Marley's song, "Pass It On."
You obviously, as we talked about, have been surrounded by some incredible and amazing people. Did that, you think, encourage you to try things you wouldn't have otherwise tried? Did you take risks that you perhaps wouldn't have if you hadn't had them around you?
Definitely. When you see that there's an opportunity, and that's one of the things with kids growing up in Jamaica, if they never see, it was Bob Marley that made all of those kids in Jamaica turn into music. Because before that, they just saw, we're just going to be a little local star, and you can barely buy a bicycle or anything. Because in the early days, when Bob was just in Jamaica, before Chris Blackwell and all that, Bob used to ride a bicycle, you know what I mean? Because he had number ones in Jamaica, but it's not enough money to even buy a car.
Yeah.
So when they saw the incredible success worldwide of Bob Marley, just inspired thousands of musicians to come up and just become great. Now we have like the Chronics and all of those guys, to just come up and be great. Having been inspired by Bob Marley. So I guess the same kind of thing, being around all these people, there's some hope. Yeah. Otherwise, you just go like, there's absolutely no hope.
Were you ever afraid of failing?
No, I would think because I just say, I'm going to try different things. If this one doesn't work, then you try the other one. If you make a film, and then I go to some radio, And then and you know, I've been lucky with the radio too, because I had the reggae show on K-Rock, which was the number one station in the country. So I had the biggest listenership. And then I left that, and then I set up Sirius XM, The Joint, which is the biggest reggae thing in America. So, you know, just you try this, you try that, and some of them work, some of them don't work. But you know, if you do 10 things, one of them will happen. You know, so.
I mean, there'll be a lot of people listening to this who maybe are in sort of regular jobs. I don't know, being a lawyer, for example, like you might have been, and dreaming of maybe trying things and worried about failing. What would you say to them?
I would say, well, first thing, don't give up your day job. Not if you're going into music, because in the days when I did it, I mean, when I would get the record deals, and it was the days you get in record deals for like $300,000, $400,000, which was huge money back then. You know? So it was, but nowadays, you know, you can't get any kind of record deals like that. It's all, you get 1 million streams nowadays, which is hard to get, and you get $4,000. And that has to pay back for the recording and everybody and the publishing and all. So the music business, to go into music now for money is crazy. In the beginning, when my brother and I started Native, it wasn't for money either. We were lucky to get a deal and get enough money just to buy the equipment and start the band. But we were going into it for money. But nowadays, if you go into it for money, there's absolutely no chance. You just have to go into it for the love of it. And if you love it, and if you can write great songs, at least if your song is not a hit by you, other people can cover it, and then you can get.
So you started from love, right? You started from a love of music and a passion for it.
Definitely, man. And seeing, you know, growing up seeing, you know, Bob Marley and them in the early days, and then seeing Beatles and Ed Sullivan, and realized, you know, how great it was, and just aspiring to be like that.
Who's been the closest person to you in your life?
Oh, definitely my brother Brian. So we do everything together. We do all the songs together. Even films, he helps with the films, and we put all the stuff together. So I've been blessed, because he's just an incredible, I mean, I think I'm a okay songwriter. I think he's a great songwriter. You know? And so he's kind of inspired my songwriting, and then he lifts, if I just come to him with a little idea that anybody else would go, oh, that can't work, he'll just say, oh, no, there's a little germ in there, let me develop it for you, and then he makes it into a great song.
And where do the stories come from?
Just life experience. I'm lucky enough, I travel around the world a lot. You know, the past few years I've been to Shanghai, Costa Rica, Istanbul, Prague, you know, just travelers. Every year I have to go to somewhere new. A new language. I don't want to go to a place where I know the language, like Hawaii or something. Like that. Go to a place with a different language and try and experience it, and listen to the music there. Listen to all the old music from Constantinople over in Istanbul and all that, and learn from all the different music, and try and inspire it, and put some of it into reggae, combine it with, combine the different things. Because in a pure form of music is not good. But when we started Native, our mission was to make like Pink Floyd of reggae. So we're kind of crossing Pink Floyd and Bob Marley and come up with a new sound. And in the beginning, we had a sound, and in the beginning, people used to call Native Black Floyd instead of Pink Floyd.
I like that. So you're absorbing culture from everywhere into your music and into your stories. That's fascinating. And is it your brother who kind of starts the writing, or is it you, or do you share ideas?
No, share ideas. And once if he comes up with an idea, I'll just add a few verses to it and change a chord or something, and then he'll do the same thing. So, but he spends more time in it than me, because he works on it 24/7, just moving the songs around and demoing them. And
you both write music as well?
Both of us do the lyrics, and both of us do the melodies as well.
So when you think of yourselves as creators, right? You're writing you're writing the music, you're writing the words, you're putting everything together, you're producing as well. Well, you did. What do you think of talent today who maybe just does one thing, maybe just sings, for example?
That's the hardest one, if you're just going to sing, because it all comes down to the song. So if you're just going to sing, you have to depend on somebody else to write the song for you, somebody else to produce it for you. And all that. So if you can even learn, any young musicians, I tell them, learn how to do Pro Tools or even Garage Band, so they can cut their own demos, do the thing, and then if they write the song, if you don't have a success with the song as a singer, somebody else can cover it. So and to learn to perform, because now it's all about performance. The early days was about recording and songwriting, but nowadays the only really way to make proper money is by performing.
A couple of things that I wanted to ask you. This is a slightly unusual question, but there are obviously, family and friends that you love, that you're close to. If you were suddenly to be taken away for whatever reason, what message would you want to leave them?
I would say the important thing is to just, first of all, work hard. Whatever you're going to do, work hard. Pass it on. Try and help as many people as you can, you know.
Yeah.
And just whatever your craft is, work on your craft.
Yeah.
You know? If you're going to be a musician, you can't practice once a week or something like that. You have to practice every day. Whatever you're going to do. If you're going to do acting, if you're going to be a lawyer, you have to do it every day. Practice, and just get better and better at your craft.
Yeah.
And remember, you're just here for a limited time and you have a mission. So just don't waste any time at all. You're allowed 1 day a week to go to the beach, but other than that, work, you know what I mean? Just work and focus.
Listen to Wayne, 1 day a week on the beach, and that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. I like that. What are you trying to pass on? What are you trying to leave behind? What's important about your life, do you think?
Well, like I said, to help other people is the important thing. So with my nieces and nephews and all that, and I tell them, so you just never have any kind of ego, just be as humble as you can, you know, help whoever you can, and focus and read a lot. You know, reading is so important. You know, it's like whatever you're going to do, focus on it and spend a lot of time on it. And if you want to become a great, you have to be a train spotter.
Yeah.
You know, you have to just do it 24 hours a day. Just live it and breathe it. And then you can become, like I said, like Keith Richards doesn't do anything else other than just play and write and focus. And, you know, and that's how you become one of the greats. You know?
So what's the best advice you ever received yourself?
And not actually being told it, but just watching and learning from the greats and seeing how focused they are. And when they're doing something, it's, you know, I remember even a lot of people said the greatest, because I thought I was good on the radio until Bob Dylan started doing his podcast, you know, when Dylan was playing, and they were even playing it on the BBC too.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was telling me that she was friends with Dylan, and she called him and said, "Hey, Bob, how are you doing?" He goes, "Don't disturb me. I'm working on my podcast. When I'm working on my podcast, I don't talk to anybody for 3 days." So that's a train spotter, right? And he says, "Why is Dylan so great on the radio? We know he's the greatest, one of the greatest songwriters of all time, and we know he's maybe the greatest lyricist of all time. But when he's doing something like podcasting, don't call him. Right. He's focused on anything. I wish I could be like that. If somebody calls me, I go, "Yeah, let's go to the party." You know, he's like, no, don't call me, right? So you have to have that to be great. You have to be a train spotter.
What do you think people worry about too much
in life? Well, politics, you know, a lot of things. So one of the things I worry about a lot about politics, because when I see how the world is going down, what's happening, and with the Third World War starting now and all that, I mean, every day I dedicate a few minutes a day just to hit out against the system and you know and make it well known and post as much as I can so people will know the truth, what's going on and all that, because people just become blinded, you know. And lucky for me, where I consider home is very stable. You know, the government in Jamaica is very stable. We have a great prime minister. They're doing a good job. Jamaica is doing pretty well, but I can't say the same for America, you know. So you have to kind of don't get too involved in politics, but be aware of it and let the people know, you know, and let the people know that when election time comes, that you're going to be changing them.
Wayne, it's been amazing talking to you. We could talk for hours, right?
Great
stuff,
man.
There's so much that we have that's common to share from our lives in Jamaica.
Yeah, man. It's one yard man to the other, and then from families coming from so far back. It's
exactly. I mean, the Jamaican word is respect.
Respect, man, definitely. Maximum respect.
Exactly. So it's been great to have you on the show, and look forward to seeing you again.
Definitely, man. Thanks a lot. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you, man.
Respect.
Take care.
Every time.
Thank you for listening to Echoes Across Time. If this conversation made you pause, reflect, or see legacy in a new way, share it with someone you'd want to remember you by. You can follow the journey and join our community wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm Tim Levy, reminding you your story is already part of someone else's legacy.